कानूनी रूप से वो बैन नहीं है भारत में, तो उसे देखना कोई गुनाह नहीं है, लोग देख रहे हैं।
आगे की स्क्रीनिंग भी ऑर्गेनाइज करेंगे आप?
बिल्कुल, इस तरह की मूवी अगर आती है और कोई ग्रुप यहाँ पे स्क्रीन करता है तो हम उसे सपोर्ट करेंगे।
If you read Bhagavad Gita or you read the Upanishads, you will see in it it's written that the truth cannot be hidden. The truth always comes out.
Is it the bankruptcy of ideas and political irrelevance that is driving them to lap up anything that comes by?
Namaste, Jai Hind, and welcome to this edition of The Right Stand. Ladies and gentlemen, they were colonialists, they were supremacists. They continue to retain that mindset despite being asked to quit India and despite being sent packing. But it rankles somewhere. Do we not need to question ourselves when we fall prey to an imperialist design? A state-sponsored media of a nation that today is struggling to even stand on its own. A nation who we within 75 years of our existence have beaten through and zoomed past as a larger economy. That nation and its state-sponsored media is trying to carry out a propaganda on a story or an incident which is again a travesty on humanity, but an incident that is more than nearly 2 decades ago, if not more. But many people who are now being pushed into watching this were not even perhaps born when this incident occurred. A lot has happened thereafter. Charges, counter-charges, arguments, more than 177 odd cases which have been disposed of by, and convictions which have been made, arrests that have happened, and exonerations that have been delivered by the highest court in our country, the parliament of our country, the voter of our country. It's all been done. But those who are in denial are continuing to peddle something that is not fully correct, factually right, economical with the truth. 2 decades later, on an agenda-driven effort which was done by somebody who came at that point in time and presented a very distorted narrative. How long will we continue to do this? And how long will people in our country, just to settle an ideological score, continue to subjugate themselves to this mental, emotional, and of course narrative-driven slavery? These are all questions that come to mind, ladies and gentlemen, when we talk about this entire documentary fight, which of course was by an imperialistic design and of course somewhere had those people who don't have the best interest of Bharat. They want Bharat to suffer, they want social strife, and they want Bharat to look weak and divided. Why can't we wisen up to that? And it's now being used by those who believe, "Arey, Modi ke khilaf hai, chalo dikha dete hain." Whether it is right or wrong, what are the facts? All that is tossed out of the window in this ideological battle. How is that fair? Is this not hurting our own country? And is this not irresponsible behavior when you misinform and misguide a whole generation? Will these same people put out the facts about what happened in 1984? Will these same people talk about what happened in 1990 in Jammu and Kashmir? Will they talk the facts? Or there they'll prefer to be economical with the truth the other way because that narrative is inconvenient? Is that not hypocrisy, ladies and gentlemen? Why should, if the truth will come out, then why run away from it? Why not accept the truth? The truth did come out, but those who talk about truth, aren't they in denial themselves? Many questions. Let's go straight across to our guests on this BBC documentary, Rao. Why peddle a malign India design is the larger question. Rajya Sabha MP and of course a legend in the world of classical arts and dance, Sonal Mansingh ji is with us. Uday Mahurkar, Chief Information Commissioner with us. Mohandas Pai Chairman, RN Capital Partners with us. And Pandit Satish K. Sharma, Chair of the British Board of Dharmic Scholars, also with us. Namaste and Jai Hind to everybody. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
I promise to try and not make this a shouting fest. It's about getting everybody's point of view, and that's why we have such an august panel. Sonal ji, those people who are pushing out narrative of people जो कभी यहाँ पर हमको कम समझकर हमें हमारी संस्कृति से दूर कर हमें लूट करके गए, वो आज हमको बताएंगे कि हमारे देश का सच क्या है, ट्रुथ क्या है. And there are those here who are saying, चलो चलो इसी को दिखाते हैं, let's show it to people. Isn't that a statement on ourselves too, as a country, as a people?
ये पहली बार तो नहीं है ना, ये पहली बार नहीं है, और विशेष करके क्योंकि वो राज RAJ उसका जो एक तुमाक है, उसके एक मूछ का जो आंकड़ा है, हाँ, तो वो तो नीचे हो रहा है, लेकिन उनको ये पसंद नहीं है कि जो राज के तले, एड़ियों के तले दबे हुए थे, वो विशेष करके पिछले 8 वर्षों में इतना कैसे ऊपर चढ़ गए कि हमारा देश तो नीचे जा रहा है, और जिस पे हम राज कर रहे थे वो तो इतने ऊपर चले गए हैं. तो ये तो उनसे सहन नहीं हो रहा है शायद. दूसरा मुझे लगता है कि उनको पता है कि जब एक देश का कल्चर, आप लोगों को कल्चर से दूर करते जाओ तो वो देश की संस्कृति, सभ्यता अपने आप ही गिरने लगती है. उन्होंने बहुत कोशिश की, जिसको सुधारने में अभी भी हम लोग लगे हुए हैं. तीसरी बात तो आप जानते ही हैं कि जब भी कुछ बढ़िया होने वाला होता है तो हम कहते हैं विघ्न संतोषी लोग, विघ्न संतोषी लोग कूद पड़ते हैं. दीज आर द नॉन सस्पेक्ट्स. इसमें कुछ आश्चर्य की बात नहीं है. मुझे तो हंसी इस बात की आ रही है कि इन लोगों की अल्प मंद बुद्धि में ये बात कब बैठेगी कि हाथी चलता है, कुत्ते पीछे भौंकते रहते हैं, हाथी को फर्क नहीं पड़ता है. और जो चीज एक बार 20 साल पहले फाइनलाइज हो गई, बंद, चैप्टर ओवर हो गया, बंद हो गया, हमारे मोदी जी को 9 घंटों तक बिठा के पूछ परछ हुई और उसके बाद सुप्रीम कोर्ट उन्होंने कह दिया कि बिल्कुल गलत, इसमें मोदी जी का कोई हाथ नहीं था. उसके बाद हु इज BBC टू रेज दिस क्वेश्चन नाउ? आई मीन हंसने की बात है. मुझे दुख नहीं हो रहा है, मुझे तो लग रहा है कि होना ही था. G20 प्रेसिडेंटशिप कैसे मिल गई भैया? अरे हमारे होते हुए कैसे हो गया? तो ये जो उनके मन का दुख है, भयंकर दुख है, वो इसी तरीके से परिवर्तित होके बार बार आपको दिखाई देगा. ये तो अभी शुरुआत है.
आप कह रहे हैं कि ये तो अभी शुरुआत है. समवेयर द प्राइम मिनिस्टर आल्सो आफ्टर विनिंग गुजरात सेइंग दैट ये तो अब और तड़पेंगे, देयर अटैक्स विल बिकम मोर सिवियर, दे विल कमिट मी हार्डर, सो वी ऑल हैव टू हैव मोर एबिलिटी टू सहन शक्ति to persevere. But Uday Mahurkar ji, we are a nation which also has 1/5 of the world population. We are the 5th largest economy in the world. We are stronger and bigger and greater than Britain. We should tell them कि अब तुम हमारे तलों के नीचे हो. You dare not do this with us. Why aren't we exercising that kind of muscle? Diplomatic and also economic, and also as a nation, why aren't we turning around and saying that you dare not do this? Then we should send out documentaries about Churchill, sir. We should see what he thought about Indians. A prime minister, they tend to hail his comments about Indians, what he thought about us as a nation, how he used our people as cannon fodder during the world wars.
Anand, I'd like to digress a bit from the focus today, You see, I am that person who was in charge of India Today magazine in Gujarat during this episode. When Godhra happened, what happened after Godhra, how Mr. Modi was exonerated, all these things I have reported at a very close quarter. There is a story I did in 2010 in human rights. That story proved that the activists who went after Modi, they were speaking lies, they were indulging in perjury. If you remember, there is one incident which was peddled for almost 8 years. One lady, Kausarbi, her womb was ripped open and the child was lifted at the point of sword. Now, when I went to meet the doctor who did the post-mortem in 2010, he told me that no such incident had happened. That lady had died in the riots, no doubt. But this whole thing was a concoction of activists who went after Mr. Modi. So the point is the BBC above the Supreme Court of India? Actually, I wonder. By now, the government of India should have, the Ministry of External Affairs should have summoned the High Commissioner of UK in India, and sought his explanation, because BBC is a state media.
Yeah.
It is exactly like Doordarshan going after Prince Charles or some dignitary of Britain, and Britain, how would British people feel about it? So I am wondering, I think we've been quite lenient.
But why?
Because
that's the
Mr.
question.
Modi was exonerated by the highest court in the country.
Udayji, that's my question. Why
And I
are we
would
so
say that
lenient?
even
Why do we
Supreme
take it
Court
lying
was very
down?
lenient with these activists, because they had indulged in perjury. They had spoken lies, which is proved in the court. My entire story was vindicated by the Supreme Court finally.
No, my question,
So,
Udayji,
I
is...
think there is a limit to what, and you see, this is part of a larger conspiracy. You see Economist, you see New York Times, they keep on peddling this from time to time. So they have an agenda. They have an agenda against India, they have an agenda against the Prime Minister, and India is doing so well on the world stage. Maybe there is an agenda behind it. Because these stories keep on appearing almost with regularity.
Yeah, Udayji, can you hear me? I'm just asking
So
why
I think it's a very serious issue. The government of India should take it up more strictly.
Jay.
Maybe it can summon the UK High Commissioner, in this matter.
Anand. Thank you, Udayji. But the fact is that if it is misinformation, why is it allowing to be spread? And why are political parties closer home, Mohandas Paiji? Why are political parties using it as an opportunity to bait the Prime Minister? They should first put the country first, because if a nation is peddling a false narrative about our country and its Prime Minister, shouldn't that come first, rather than trying to say, oh, this is going to help in my ideological battle and my obsession to hate Modi?
Anand, the rise of Prime Minister Modi has made the existing power structure irrelevant and redundant. So they are seizing any opportunity to fight and show Prime Minister Modi in bad light. And this has been going on for the last 8 years. And right from 2002, you are seeing the leader of a political party make obscene remarks against him in public, for which he gave it back. Now, the BBC is part of a global movement led by George Soros to go against what they term as nationalistic governments. Because these are people from Europe who are against nationalism. They forget that Indian nationalism is not against any other country or any other person. It is against a colonial power which oppressed and looted this country. Indian nationalism is not about domination, whereas European nationalism, like the German nationalism or the British nationalism, the French nationalism, was all about domination. So they're applying the European standard without knowing what India is all about. And with their money power, they bought over many Indians. We can see that open society, who are the Indians who are working with them? So many people have joined them. And one person who worked for a global charity or global NGO in human rights on a TV interview with CNN abused Prime Minister Modi and called him names.
Yes.
These are Indians who have sold their souls for a few dollars more. And you see it happening. The Washington Post, the New York Times are all part of the same group of people funded by George Soros and people like that. So they have taken it on themselves to save the world. They forget, Indian democracy is very robust. Indian democracy means that we elect our own people, we have opposition parties, we have the rule of law, we have courts. We are much more democratic than many of those countries who claim to be democratic. Now, in this BBC thing is clearly a hit job. If there's a documentary to be made, the documentary has to be based on document. Now, all the fake interviews with those people whom they have quoted, they've been shown to be liars. They're shown to be making deliberately false statements by the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court has pointed it out. They had a SIT under the care of the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court has heard everybody, given a reasoned order. When the order is there, all the data is there, the evidence is there, the highest court of India has given a judgment.
Yes.
Now, after 20 years, the BBC comes out with this kind of a fake narrative, and you can see very clearly Pakistan is using the fake narrative in the United States and other places. Now, Pandit Satish Sharma of London has raised the issue: how many Pakistanis are there working in BBC? You might be interested to know, and you must find the data. Many Pakistanis in the last 20 years have infiltrated the BBC, and you can see them writing negative reports about India all the while. How many negative reports about Pakistan has come on the BBC about the 1,000 young Sindhi girls or minors being abducted, converted,
Yes.
and the courts holding it to be valid? I mean, this is a travesty of human rights against minors. How many of them are talking about the misuse of power and the economic, turmoil that's happening in Pakistan? None of them are doing that because it's all a cover-up. They infiltrated the BBC. Many of the BBC leftists are hand in glove with the Islamists, and there is money at play, and you can see the narrative coming out very, very clearly. And
So-
it's been
so
happening.
let me-
Anand,
Ji.
I want to end by saying you can look at in the last 2 or 3 years how many stories the BBC has run about India. How many of them are negative? Is there nothing positive about this country which has grown so much, which has 1.4 billion people, possibly the largest population for any country in the world? Is nothing positive? Why didn't you do research in your TV channel and see in the last 3 years how many stories they have done, how many are negative?
My point is,
Any other
Mohandas
country
Paji,
in the world has got so much negative reporting, and these are all done by the BBC Indians in India.
Correct.
And they run fake narratives.
So if BBC is very strongly rooted in India,
Anand, I would like to say something here.
with the BBC
Anand.
Hindi, with its own operations, its website, and these are all Indians who are part of this, and it
Yes.
has been
Same
held as a
Indians are
beacon
running
as far as the
fake
Anand, I would
standard,
like to say
as
something.
far as the standard of journalism is concerned. My
You can see
question.
the names. You
Ma-
must identify the names and put them in the
My
public.
question, sir,
How
my
many
question-
negative stories
Anand, I would
they have
like to
run?
say something.
My question, sir, is yes, Uday Maurkar ji. My question, Mr. Uday Maurkar, and I'm coming back to you.
Anand, let me intervene here.
Ji,
I think it is a good time for the government of Britain to look into the entire structure of BBC. BBC is full of pan-Islamists, full of communist thinking people. I think there is a lobby there which is not in control of the British government. I think it is a good time for them to go deep into it and find out who are those people who are indulging in these antics from time to time.
no, but
And it is
that
state
is
media. I
that
think
is
the government of Britain has to summon the courage.
that is Udayji. That is about BBC there, and BBC International and Pandit Satish Sharma ji will correct me if I'm wrong. Is funded by the MEA. It comes under the MEA because there is a huge budget of the British taxpayer that is given to them to fund them, and it runs into billions of pounds.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
but
That
there
is
is
what I want to say.
but this beacon of journalism, this beacon or gold standard, also has its operations embedded in India. What was the kind of communication that it was putting out when India was battling COVID and it came out with its vaccine policy? What did we do as a country to try and ask this organization what its intent is?
It has an agenda against India.
My
There is no
point is,
doubt.
but it
There
is
no
continuing
more
to.
evidence
It
needed
is
to prove
continuing.
that
Sir,
BBC has an agenda
Sir,
against this country.
my point is, sir, you are also the CIC, and I humbly ask you, how many times have you pulled up the BBC here in India for the kind of stories that they have put out, which has been riddled with misinformation as it's being alleged by Mr. Mohandas Pai? I am asking you, how are we asserting ourselves and saying that we will defend our sovereignty and the right to correct information? Is that not a fair question to ask? Udayji, why should such organizations continue to prosper in our
Anand,
country
I am here
and
in my
grow?
capacity as an author. Anand,
No,
my job
I respect you,
of
Udayji.
CIC,
Udayji, I
Central
respect you.
Information Commissioner is a different job. I am a judge in the Central RTI Court. But here I come in my capacity as an author, as a historian, as a former journalist who has covered these events very closely during my tenure in Gujarat. And therefore, I very strongly believe that this misinformation should stop. The government of India should take stronger steps to contain BBC, to convey to the government of Britain to intervene and see as to what kind of structure BBC has. Who are those people? There are pan-Islamists in BBC. BBC, there are people with communist mind thinking. All those people have to be looked at now.
You make a fair point.
Attacking the Prime Minister of India, who is getting repeatedly elected.
The simple point
and one more thing, this government has done a good job of developmental policies for the minorities.
Sir, there is no. But I'll tell you what, Udayji, I'm interrupting you. Udayji, I'm interrupting. With due respect, I'm interrupting you here, sir. Sir,
very good
sir,
for
it is not about how we treat our people. We don't need to tell anybody else. The people know it themselves. It is this. It is why they tend. This is how they tend to always put us in a defensive position. We have to turn around and ask them, who are you to put this out, and on what basis? Have you got an authentication and a certification by the government of India from the Prime Minister's office? Have you got the Supreme Court judgments and the positions in place? Have you got your facts right? And if you are not, then you stand in contempt of the court here. You stand in contempt of the people of India and the government.
Absolutely.
Is that not a position that we should take, Pandit Satish Sharma ji? I know you are organizing a protest against the BBC this Sunday, but your thoughts. Thank you for your patience. And I'll go back to Sonal ji after this.
Anandji, Jai Shri Ram, I can't tell you how happy I am that this documentary has actually been aired now, because we see this unholy trinity in its full form. The Labour Home Secretary at the time, the gentleman who was responsible for the dossier which said there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, he was called a liar in the House of Commons. He is the person who the Bharatiya indigenous left-leaning media have chosen to be their spokesman. And you know, that says to me, it's an indication of how desperate the Congress media, the left-leaning media are, that they have had to resort to such a disreputable person and to produce and refer to a disgraced documentary in order to try in some way and shape to tarnish Prime Minister Modi ji. But there are two aspects on here which we're very, very delighted to see. We have a Labour Party Home Secretary automatically assuming in 2002 that the Hindus were at fault. And we have the same Labour Party and the same Labour leadership in Leicester automatically assuming that the Leicester issue was Hindus who were at fault. You know, we're almost 20 years now, and it's the same institutionalized, systematized anti-Hindu, anti-India rhetoric that they're trying to push. But I would say that the Bharatiya government has a responsibility to actually sort this issue out. There is no reason at all why the BBC's license to broadcast online services, radio services and television streaming services should not be suspended. Please remember the British government have suspended Republic TV because they decided it didn't match its editorial standards. The British government suspended RT's right to broadcast, the Russian state broadcaster, because it felt that there was some sort of an issue with its news supply. It was contrary to the desired messaging. So why on earth hasn't the government automatically suspended, even if it's only for a period of 7 days, the BBC's right to broadcast? And for those who are so upset by freedom of speech and freedoms of broadcasting, etc., please also remember that freedom of speech is an obligation that a government has to its citizens. There is no obligation on any government to give freedom of speech to out-of-state, non-state actors, especially when they act in a manner which is hostile. So I'm delighted that all these snakes are coming out of the woodwork. Here in the United Kingdom, we are now beginning to have quite a, shall we say, a delightful time with this issue. Labour have shot themselves in the foot, and it's almost as though, you know, Chor Machaye Shor, the more noise they make, the more they are revealing how much they have stolen and how their morality is so inadequate. I was listening to Jack Straw's statements, and one by one I was thinking, hang on, he's accusing Prime Minister Modi of delaying the police and preventing them from helping protect citizens. Well, actually, we saw that on Leicester. We all saw it in front of videos, didn't we? Hindu temples were being attacked and the police were standing to one side in a Labour-dominated Leicester. So we are going to see more and more of this hypocrisy. And I think the one thing that was really clear was the unbelievable white man's burden in Jack Straw's attitude and his demeanour. you know, the manner in which he assumed that he actually had a right to send an investigative team to investigate something like this, I'm really looking forward to finding out, did the Congress Party at that time give permission to Jack Straw to send a team or not? Because that's the heart of this issue. If they did, then it's interference by a non-state actor in the internal affairs of Bharat. And this is going to run and run. And I'm really hoping it's going to give us an opportunity to bring the BBC to the table and have a genuine conversation about the manner in which they continue to harm the British Hindu community and India's national state and reputation.
Very well put there, and it doesn't stop with the BBC. We've just got information coming through our investigations editor Manoj Gupta, who says that, and this is a CNN News 18 exclusive, it's a big story, ladies and gentlemen, just getting you the gist of it, we'll get you more details through the course of tonight and tomorrow. The Muslim Brotherhood, Pakistan, and there is an anti-India campaign that's being waged. Top intelligence sources are telling CNN News 18 via our investigations editor Manoj Gupta that Pakistan and their handlers are sitting outside the country and running a strong media campaign against Bharat. They are associated with media organizations in Turkey and Qatar. There is the whole idea of political instability in Pakistan right now is the main reason that Pakistani elements have been doing all this in the name of anti-India history to divert the attention and to try and refocus it away from what is happening in Pakistan. Journalists and media organizations settled in Turkey and Qatar are supporting, and there are other nations who are supporting them. They've actually formed a group. They have actually formed a group which is propagating disinformation. It's spread by pro-Pakistan groups, pro-China groups to undermine India's relations with Gulf countries. It's a big network that is happening. We will try and get you these details very soon and more details as to how this organized racket is running. Part of these people who are running these rackets on these channels are then finding their way elsewhere. And you know where, in terms of other media organizations, and then they continue to peddle the same narrative. More skeletons will tumble out of the closet. I've run out of time, so I thank our panelists. Thank you very much for your thoughts, and I look forward to speaking with you at length as we get more details on the same. Thank you very much. We're going to take a very short break. When we come back, we are in an exclusive conversation with Congressman Republican Dr. Rich McCormick. Stay with us.